Is this some kind of joke? The young lead technician's voice cracked through the heavy afternoon air, sharp with arrogance. Ryan Calder, 27 years old and proud of his spotless record, kicked the landing skid of the motionless UH-1 Sentinel, its olive green skin soaking up the heat. Around him, a dozen crew members in crisp coveralls stood idle, arms crossed, their eyes flicking between laptops spitting out perfect system checks and the stubborn reality of a helicopter that refused to start. The Sentinel's rotor blades hung limp, drooping like a plant long without water. A few yards away, Walter Kane, wiry, white-haired, and weathered by decades of sun and wind, watched silently. Dressed in faded jeans and a scuffed bomber jacket from another era, his hands rested deep in his pockets. His gaze never left the helicopter, not the crew, not the equipment. Ryan glanced over, irritation flashing. "Restricted area, sir. You'll need to head back to the gate." Walter's pale eyes shifted from the Sentinel's tail boom to Ryan's face, calm, steady, unreadable. "General Mason sent for me," he said, voice low and gravelly. The laughter from the crew was instant. None of them realized that the man they were dismissing had once kept this very bird alive when the sky itself was trying to kill it. Walter Kane didn't move toward the gate. Instead, he stepped onto the tarmac like it was his own front porch. His boots left dusty imprints on the concrete as he began to circle the UH-1 Sentinel. Ryan Calder's crew exchanged smirks. "Look at Grandpa Ghostbuster," one whispered. "Think he's gonna talk it to life?" Walter ignored them. His eyes tracked each rivet, each seam in the metal skin, like a surgeon scanning for the faintest sign of infection. He paused near the tail boom, tilting his head at the faint scuff marks just beneath a small maintenance panel. "She's been sitting too long," he murmured, almost to himself. "And she's been listening to the wrong hands." Ryan stepped forward. "Sir, whatever you think you know, the diagnostics are clean. There's nothing wrong here." Walter's gaze stayed on the panel. "You ever open this?" "Why would we?" Ryan scoffed. "Would take half a day's paperwork, and for what?" From his jacket, Walter pulled a worn leather pouch. The zipper rasped open to reveal a handful of tools. Each one hand-shaped by years of use, their handles polished by sweat and heat. His thumb rested on a spanner with an odd bend in its shaft. In that moment, the chatter from the crew seemed to fade. This wasn't just a man with old tools. This was someone who carried the weight of places they'd never been, and battles they'd only read about. Airman Peterson had been quiet through most of the exchange, but something about Walter Kane's presence didn't sit like a random walk-on. The way the old man's hands rested on those tools, like they belonged to him more than his own shadow, told a different story. Breaking away from the group, Peterson ducked into the hangar's side office. A quick search through the maintenance logs turned up nothing, but the roster of special clearances did. His eyes widened. With one deep breath, he picked up the phone and dialed the number for General Mason himself. The response was immediate. "Who did you say is on my flight line?" The general's voice tightened. "Walter Kane. Hold him there. I'm coming." Peterson returned to the tarmac just as the crew was still chuckling over Walter's sole comment. But their laughter faltered when three matte black command SUVs rolled through the gate, tires crunching on gravel. When the doors swung open, General Mason himself stepped out, his uniform sharp, his eyes locked on Walter. Without hesitation, he crossed the tarmac, boots echoing, and raised his hand in a crisp salute. The crew froze. Not one of them had seen a general salute first. And in that instant, they realized the man they'd mocked wasn't just some old stranger, he was the kind of legend who could make history walk straight onto their flight line. General Mason's salute held for a full second before Walter Kane returned it, the gesture simple yet heavy with unspoken history. "Good to see you again, Walt," Mason said, his voice carrying more respect than rank. "She giving them trouble?" Walter's gaze drifted back to the UH-1 Sentinel. "She's not giving trouble, General. She's giving warnings, they just aren't listening. Without another word, Mason turned to Ryan Calder. Step back, Lieutenant. Let him work. The crew parted like a tide, the teasing gone, replaced by a sharp, uneasy silence. Walter approached the maintenance panel, running his fingers along its edge as though reacquainting himself with an old friend. From his pouch, he drew the bent spanner, fitting it to a hidden fastener the diagnostics had never checked. A quick twist, a pop, and the panel swung open, revealing a small hairline fracture in the fuel regulator housing. Invisible to sensors. Fatal if ignored. Ryan's throat tightened. The crack was so fine it looked like a pencil mark. Walter looked over his shoulder. That right there would have grounded her in the middle of the air. Men would have died. The words hit heavier than any rebuke. No one moved, and for the first time, Ryan realized skill wasn't about years on paper, it was about knowing where to look when no one else did. With the fracture replaced and the Sentinel systems tested, the deep, familiar whump 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 of the rotor filled the air. She was alive again. Walter Kane stepped back, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen decades of grease and dust. Mason clasped his shoulder. Still got it, the general said. Walter smiled faintly. She just needed someone to remember what she was built for. Ryan approached, eyes down but voice steady. Sir. I owe you an apology. And, maybe a lesson or two, if you're willing. Walter studied him for a moment, then handed over the bent spanner. First lesson, tools don't fix machines. People do. Learn the difference. The crew watched as Walter walked toward the gate, the late afternoon sun cutting a sharp silhouette. Mason stood tall, his gaze following the man who had once kept them all flying. Ryan turned the spanner in his hands, feeling its weight, not just of metal, but of everything it represented. And in that quiet moment, he understood the truth, sometimes the most valuable person on the field is the one you almost didn't let in. In life, true wisdom often comes from those who've walked the path long before us. Experience isn't just about age. It's about the lessons learned, the mistakes endured, and the quiet knowledge of where to look when others see nothing. Walter Kane's story reminds us that respect for experience can save us from costly errors, in work and in life. Before dismissing someone as outdated, remember, they might hold the missing key you didn't even know you needed. If this story resonates with you, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss our next inspiring video.